Hey, how's it going, guys? Isaiah here again with Eternal Dominion Ministries, and to add on to our series of the fruits of the Spirit. And today's fruit is the fruit of patience. And so, to give us a recap on what the fruits are, it is Galatians 5:22-23, and it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things." So, that is the overview of all the fruits of the Spirit. And today, like I said, is patience. And now, patience is one that is kind of big for me because I've struggled pretty much my whole life with patience. I've had very little patience up to this point in my life. And not to throw any shade, but I didn't have great examples for patience. And so and yeah, I remember growing up and seeing a lot of people in my life and the way that they dealt with situations, and it seemed like patience was something that wasn't really in the tool belt. It was there, but it was like it needed a little bit tune up, needed some like WD-40, some, you know what I mean. But I'm not trying to bag on the people in my life too hard because they raised me to who I am to this day, and I thank them for that. So, some questions for the fruit. Our question is, what does it really mean to have patience as a fruit of the Spirit? Next question is, do you have less patience with some than others? Now, I want to take a moment to really dive into this question, and I want to be a little vulnerable here and say that at times I realize that I am not as patient with those that are closer to me than with strangers. You might be the same way, and you might not have noticed it till just now. And so it's you know not to say that like, oh, that makes us the worst, we're the scum of the earth, bottom of the barrel, but it really should make us reflect and really analyze, why do we do that? So, if that is you, take a moment to reflect and think, am I being not as gracious with those around me, closest to me? So the next question is, do you have less patience with those closest to you? So it seems like we kind of dove into that question as well. So let's dive into the definitions of patience. And so the biblical definition is, patience is not a passive trait shown through waiting and light tolerance. Patience is actively enduring trials, persevering towards a goal, and having a steadfast spirit. That is patience, defined in the Bible. The dictionary definition is bearing pains or trials calmly or without complaint. But as we know, the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in several different languages, and Greek being one of them. So there's two different words used in the Bible for patience. One that was mostly used in the Old Testament, which is macrotumia. Macrotumia. And now, a slight confession, I am not Greek, I'm Mexican, and so I really hope that that pronunciation was good, and it's not like when someone says, no me tokis, no me tokis, as opposed to no me toques. I think you get the idea. I'm trying here. But macrotumia focuses on patience with respect to others, often associated with being slow to anger. So we see that in the Old Testament. This is a trait that is being shown by God so many times. So macrotumia is heavily related to the idea of being slow to anger. Now in the New Testament, there is another Greek word that is heavily used, and it is Ipomoni. Ipomoni. And this one focuses on steadfastness, endurance, and perseverance in the face of trials and tribulations. Also defined as an unwavering commitment to a goal or purpose. So this was added into the New Testament by the apostles. And so now this is heavily related to the idea of hope. So macrotumia was heavily related to the idea of love, because remember, patience is a big aspect in love, being slow to anger, being patient. And ipomoni is heavily related to the idea of hope. And so it is that unwavering commitment, the unwavering commitment to living a life in Christ and being steadfast in the Spirit. So while the dictionary and the biblical definitions are pretty similar, there are a couple of differences. The dictionary doesn't really provide a reason to be patient or a purpose in being patient. Many of us are patient at work. You know, you're watching the clock. Well, that's not really being patient, but well, actually, it's not really a good example. But anyways, many times we try to be patient at work, and we just want to get to the end of the shift. We want to go home. We want to eat, shower, be with our family, do whatever that we want to do besides work. But eventually, we have to come back to work, and we're gonna have to do it all over again. But being patient with others is probably the most difficult task that we have. But I think it's because we have this idea that we want these people to have common sense. And we're always like, don't you have the common sense to not do that? And sometimes, there's that saying, common sense isn't common. And so we need to be gracious with these people. We need to be gracious with everyone and with ourselves too. Sometimes we do things that, someone's going to look at us and they're going to say, don't you have common sense not to do that? So we should be gracious with others as with ourselves. So the important questions regarding our patience is, what is supporting and giving strength to your patience in achieving a goal? And what are the goals? Are they all short term? Are they long term? Is it a mixture? Are you enduring for self or because it is pleasing to the Lord? So, what is your purpose in being patient? What drives you to be patient? Is it just to get to the end of a situation? Is it just to be done with something? Or are you being patient because the Lord is asking us to be patient? Our patience is perfected and developed in trusting in God's perfect timing. And that's a tough one because we always want what we want right now. We want instant gratification, especially in this day and age where instant gratification is pretty much everywhere. So we have a big problem with just waiting patiently. And we're just demanding it now. And a lot of times when we get those things and it's too early, we mess it up. Like people always like, I want $1 million, I would do this, I would do that. They got the perfect plan. But I promise you, just like many of the people who hit the lottery, they end up just being broke again because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle themselves with that kind of money. And so they just end up losing it all. That's not to say that all of them are like that, but most of them. And that's probably what would happen to you. And it's probably what would happen to me, honestly. I'd probably do the same thing. So what are some of the examples in the Bible that can teach us about patience? And so the biggest story is the story of Job. And so a quick overview, if you don't know the story of Job, is that he is a man who is just living righteously. He is faithful and he is without blame. And the devil says, well, he's only like that because you give him everything. He has everything. And I bet you if he had none of that, he'd turn his back on you. And so God said, bet. Let's see. And Job loses everything. He loses his family, his possessions, and his health. He's lost everything and he's just sitting in the dirt, covered in boils, and he's down bad. But he holds on to his faith and he trusts in the Lord. And even though he doesn't understand why this is happening, he knows that there is a bigger purpose And he knows that God is watching over him. So he's being patient and he's trusting in God's timing. And he knows that God is going to come and he's going to heal him. He's going to resolve the issues that are at hand. So another example is Sarah and Abraham and their son Isaac. And now Sarah and Abraham, they were getting really old. Sarah even got to the point where she knew that, well, she thought that she wouldn't be able to have a son anymore or children anymore. But then Sarah was told that she would be able to bear a son. And although she didn't quite fully believe it, it still happened. And their son Isaac was born. And then later on, Abraham was called to sacrifice his son. So as Abraham and Isaac are going up this mountain, and Abraham is preparing himself to sacrifice his son because God asked him to, he patiently waited to the moment that it was going to happen. And then God said, okay, I see that your faith is true and that you're a faithful servant. And he supplies a ram in place of Isaac. It must have been kind of awkward on the way back, huh? But so patience is key in this walk. Patience is not always just sitting and waiting. Patience is often an active state of being. Walking with God, doing his will, enduring trials, especially when nothing makes sense. Because there's many times it'll be like that. Nothing makes sense and it feels like everything is just not going your way, and it's just a time of being patient. It's the season to prepare yourself for what is to come. So, some final questions here. And the first one being, am I patient with my own limitations, trusting that God is still at work? Now, a quick story. I am going to San Diego State, baby, woo! But I don't have a job at the moment, and I'm going to school full time. And in my career field, which computer programming, computer science, there's a lot of people, and the job market is not looking good. And sometimes I get a little anxious and I get worried, but I trust that God is going to make a way. And in preparing myself, going to school and being focused, I know that an opportunity will come my way, and I know that God will make it happen. And that puts my heart at ease. It puts my mind at ease. The second question is, are there areas in my life where I feel that God is taking too long? Sometimes, just like we were talking about earlier about instant gratification, sometimes we do get that way. We're like, okay, God, I need this now. And it seems to happen a lot with relationships. Like, people want that perfect husband, the perfect wife now. Like, they need to fall into my, well, I was going to say they need to fall into my lap, but maybe not that. Let's slow it down, right? But they want this person to come into their lives now so that way they can get started on their journey together. But it's about being patient. And then if you watch the video about love, you know that we need to build ourselves up so that way we can be that person for them. That person that is full of love, that is full of God, that we can be that perfect partner. Well, can't really be perfect, but we can be a good partner. Anyways, the last question is, am I waiting with faith or with frustration? That one I won't expand upon, but I will say it again. Am I waiting with faith or with frustration? So reflect on that one in your current situation or season. But anyways, that's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as always. And if there's anything that I missed or that you would like to add, as always, you can leave it down in the comments. And that's it. See you.